Good morning, good people. This is back with another video, and this is going to be a follow up to the video that I did recently. Um, I think the title was called "Should Men After Yah's Own Heart Marry Western Women?" So, trying to get my microphone adjusted right. For some reason, it's not adjusting right. So, anywho, um, there were some things that I wanted to touch on last time that I didn't touch on. And so I thought that I'd give a visual representation to some of the things that I said last time, um, pertaining to um, the decline or the opting out of women of marriage of African descent in marriage in black homes around the 1960s time frame. So there's actually a really good website called blackdemographics.com, and it's by black people. They go around, take statistics on pretty much anything, all things related to blacks and black category. So I wanted to just kind of touch on that and give some representation to why I said what I said. Now, it doesn't matter what place a person is from, so to speak. They can always have a bad character. But we know here in Western society, there's a push for feminism and there's a push for the separation of the family. There's a push for all things that are contemptible in the eyes of the Most High, all things that are abominable in the eyes of the Most High. And you can always tell. I heard Pastor Stephen Darby say this years ago. God bless his soul. He said that you can always tell the temperature of a society by its women. And what he meant by that was you can apparently I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties over here. So I'm just working through them if you guys bear with me. Um so just to give context what I'm saying about how our women represent themselves, right? Our women in our society believe that it doesn't matter how they dressed or how they adorn themselves outwardly. That regardless of what they have on, they still should be treated like a lady. And the one thing that I love about the Word of God is that the Bible tells us it's written down and made for our learning, for our instructions, and the instructions that we should follow. So there's um, a pretty good um, there's a pretty good example of women adorning themselves in a certain way and being treated as such in the Word of God. Um, and I just want to get to that real fast. I don't want to put it up on screen because I don't too much care for, even though I use some versions of the Bible on screen. That's just only because I can't get my actual version on the Bible. The Bible that I use, the Sefer Bible, I can't get it to seem to be on the screen. So, um, give me 1 second. Okay, now this is Genesis 38. And I want to read Genesis 38. I want to read it in full context. Okay, I'm gonna give you. Well, let me say this. I'm just gonna give a brief summary of it, and I'm gonna read the scriptures. Genesis 38 is about Yehuda or Judah, and Judah had 3 sons. Now, Judah did something that he wasn't supposed to do, and if you read the um, what is it called, the testimony of the 12 patriarchs, Judah himself goes into detail um, about what he did and why he did it. So let me give this some full. Let me just. Judah basically took a Canaanite wife, and he wasn't supposed to take a Canaanite wife. He was supposed to go back to his father's kindred and take a wife from there. But you're not going to find it in the Bible. But Judah's the Canaanite woman's father got Judah drunk and gave his daughter to her, to Judah, and the children gave Judah hell. Judah had 3 sons. And basically, as it was Hebraic law, Evrei law, and the customs of the Evrei, which is what you would call the Hebrew people, if the firstborn son died without having an heir, then through his wife, then his next the eldest son was supposed to take her as a wife and produce an heir for his brother. Now, if you don't know how biblical society was, then that would sound crazy to you. But like I said, you can't not understand the Bible from a Western mindset. So let me read this in context. It says, "And Yahudah saw there was a daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Sheach, and he took her and went into her. And she conceived a boy's son, and he called his name And she conceived again a boy's son, and he called his name Onan. And she yet again conceived and bore a son, and called his name Shelach. And he was um at Cheved when she bore him. And Yahudah took a woman for his firstborn, whose name was Tamar." Now that may sound confusing to y'all, but basically the custom of God, the custom of the Hebrew people, of the Evrei people, the fathers actually had a heavy hand in the selection of a wife for his son, because it's very important, because you're selecting a woman to continue on the line for your son. It wasn't about going out here and just marrying because you feel all loved and dovey and you twirling all in the air and you're happy and all these things. It wasn't necessarily about that. Marriage is more than just your feelings for someone. Marriage is commitment, not only to that person, but to the genealogy and the lineage. Let that sink in for a second. But anywho, and this is what it says. "And Yahudah's firstborn son, was wicked in the sight of Yahuwah, and Yahuwah slew him." So Judah's firstborn son was just evil in the sight of the Most High. Now, this is the book of Genesis. So I don't have it pulled up on my tablet or my phone right now, but I'm reading from the Sefer Bible. And basically, let me just explain it to you. And I'll probably come back and give it full context. But let me explain this to you. Was evil because his father Tamar was not, she was not Canaanite. She wasn't from there. She was actually among his Judah's family. She was from Aram. So she was Shemite. The Canaanites was Hamites, and Tamar was Shemite. That's very important. And basically, didn't like Tamar. He didn't want to marry. He didn't want to be with Tamar. He never even consummated a marriage where he wouldn't touch her, because he wanted to marry a wife from his mother's people, the Canaanites. So it was a whole year, and he still hadn't consummated a marriage to Tamar. So the Most High slew him. Simple and plain. And Yahudah said unto Onan, go into your brother's woman and marry her, and raise up a seed to your brother. And it says Onan knew that the seed would not be his. And it came to pass, when he went into his brother's woman, that he spilled it on the ground, lest he should give seed to his brother. So basically what Onan did, Onan took Tamar, took her as a wife, slept with her. But when it came time to, basically it came that special moment during the during the festivities, as I'm gonna say it like that. When it came to that special moment, he basically withdrew from her and ejaculated on the ground. This is what the Bible is saying. It says spilled it on the ground. And this thing he did displease Yahuwah. So what did the Most High do? Wherefore he slew him also. God don't kill two of Judah's sons. Says, then said Yahudah to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, remain a widow at your father's house till Shelach my son be grown. For he said, lest perchance he die also, as his brethren did. And Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house. So Tamar went back to her father. Now you have to understand that even in African culture, which African culture is every culture, we're gonna get into that later on. Later on in a different video. But you have to understand that to go back into your father's house after being a wife was a thing of shame. Now here she's a widow, so it wasn't too bad. But she basically went back to her father's house and waiting to be taken as a, Shelach was promised to her. And so she's waiting. So here's what it says. And in the process of time, the daughter of Shelach, Yahudah's woman, died. So basically, Judah basically became, he lost his wife, and Yahudah was confident and went up to his sheep shears in Timnath, and he and his friend Hirah the Adulamite. Now, y'all, some of these words are a little. This is the actual Hebrew name, so just be patient. And it was told Tamar, saying, behold, your father-in-law goes up to Timnath to shear his sheep. And this is the point that I wanted to make. And it says, she put her widow's garments off from her, and she covered her with a veil, and wrapped herself, and sat in an open place, which is by the way to Timnah. For she saw that Shelach was grown, and she was not given unto him to be his woman. Now, just notice the choice of words. She was not given unto him to be his woman. When Yahudah saw her, he thought her to be a harlot because she covered her face. So when Judah saw her, he thought her to be a whore, a prostitute. Now, she was a widow, but what did it say? And she put her widow's garments off from her. So she took her widow garments off, and she put on clothes, and she dressed herself to appear as a harlot. So she dressed herself to appear as a prostitute. And he turned into her by the way and said, go to you, I pray you, let me come into you. Now you got to understand, Judah's a widow. And I'm not making an excuse for his sin, but Judah's a widow. He's sad, he's broken, he needs comfort because he lost his wife. So he see this woman, he's like, look, man, it's been a while. So, and gave into his urges. For he knew not that he it says, for he knew not that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, what will you give me that you may come unto me? And he said, I will send you a kid from the flock, which is a baby, a baby goat. And she said, will you give me a pledge till you send it? And he said, what pledge shall I give you? And she said, your signet, your bracelets, your staff that is within your hand. And he gave it to her, and she came and he came into her, and she conceived by him. So she played the harlot and got pregnant. Now I'm gonna stop right there. The point I wanted to make was that the way that you dress as a woman, your appearance is extremely, extremely important. You can't be out here dressing the same as harlots and whores and expect someone to treat you as a wife. But yet, this is the culture of our land at this point in time. There is no distinction between women that have great character and that are brides and wives versus the women that are whores. Mostly, you can't say that 100%, but mostly the majority is there's no distinction. So with that being said, let me pivot off that. Let me go back into something. So the last video that I did, I talked about the should a man of Yah marry a woman from the Western world, and particularly I'm pertaining to African Americans. So I talked about that in the 1960s that the women took a deal that basically put the black marriage on a downward course. It just basically told the woman that she didn't need the man anymore. So women didn't sought to be married anymore. And this is that. And I'm just want to show you. So I'm going to show you on screen what I'm talking about. Let me share my screen real quick. I'm trying to give me a second. Okay. So now I got this put up. So this is blackdemographics.com. All right. This is a very, very good information. Very good website for great information about all things African Americans and how things are affecting us. So I want to show you guys something. This says black women more likely to be married than white women until the 1970s. Then it goes down here to give a chart. And right here, this says percent never married among women aged 35 and older by race from 1819 to 2010. Now, I'm going to read this real quick because I want to put this in full context. It says the U.S. Census Bureau released a report that studied the history of marriage in the United States in 2012. They discovered some startling statistics when calculating marriage by race. The report found that historically, African Americans aged 35 and older were more likely to marry than white Americans. You see that? It says historically, this is the United States Census Bureau, because you guys don't feel like nothing's valid unless a white person say it. Said the report found that historically, African Americans at age 35 and older were more likely to be married than white Americans. This was true from 1890 until sometime around the 1960s, when only 5% minus 6% of black women aged 35 older were not married. During the same time percentage, the white women not married was closer to 10%. So it says between 5 and 6% of black women aged 35 and older were not married from 1890 until sometime around the 1960s. That is crazy. That is crazy. That means 94 to 95% of all black women were married from the ages of 35 and older from 1890 to the 1960s. During that same time, the percentage for white women were not married was closer to 10% and just over 10% for white men, while just under 10% for black men. The first two charts include the report only. The heading have been altered by blackdemographics.com to outline these findings. So they just basically saying the only thing they changed was the heading. That was it. This right here. That's the only thing that they changed. So look at these numbers. Look how, and this is black women right here. This little purple bar is black women. This little green bar is white women. Now, for the most part, white women stayed around 10%, dropped down to 5%, went back up to about 7, I'll say 7 or 8%. But look at the number for black women. And then from 1890, look at that line. It consistently stayed around 5% until what? 1960. See that? Then it went up to around about, let's say, 8, 9% in 1970. Look at 1980. Boom. It went up again. But look at between 1980 and 1990 and 2000 and 2010. Look at these. Look at that. It's like a rocket ship taking off. Look at that bar. It just went straight up. It went straight up. Y'all see that? Look at this. Look at that. So what happened? What happened? It says black men more likely to be married than white men until the 1960s. We're going to get into that later, add more context to that. We can get into that a little later. But what happened? Let me explain to you what happened. So let me explain to you what happened. It was something called welfare and third wave feminism. See, our community had no choice but to stay together because, it was hard enough trying to make ends meet. And even though it wasn't an ideal situation, and forget all these movies that you see, The Color Purple is a lie. Yeah, I said it. The Color Purple is a lie. The Help is a lie. Black men are not like that. That is just propaganda to make you feel sorry for and to put extra icing on what black women had to do. It was bad enough, but we wasn't the ones that was oppressing them. Now, if I go back into that same chart, I can show you another contributing factor that happened to black men, which was called incarceration. And that also contributed to the marriage rate declining among black people like it did. But what happened with black women? Well, black women realized that they no longer needed a black man. The government, that same government that had enslaved them, had raped them, killed their sons, stolen their daughters and raped their daughters, that same government came back and said, all right, listen, because you are a woman, we're going to offer you welfare. And black women took the deal. Now, a lot of these black women in this society, they don't even know why they're on autopilot as far as having a contempt for that man. And here's why I say, let me define contempt. Let me just define contempt real quick. Let me define contempt. Let me define this. Let's just pull this up. What does it mean to be? What does contempt mean? It says the feeling with which a person regards anything considered mean, vile, or worthless. Disdain, scorn, the state of being despised, dishonor, disgrace, law, willful disobedience to or open disrespect for the rules or order of a court. Hmm. Mm. So, a lot of women of African descent in this country have a disdain or a contempt for black men, and they don't understand why. And the black men in this country don't even understand why. They don't understand what they're dealing with. They don't understand that certain things were just outright done and targeted towards the African American community. There was a propaganda. I'm gonna put up the. We're gonna do I'm gonna do a part 3 of this. And I'm gonna go through the Willie Lynch letter because that's highly important. Now I'm not gonna stay on this series too long because this Reconstruction Project page is not about to defame or destroy African American women. This doesn't have anything to do with the appearance um, or just a disdain altogether for African American women, because it doesn't. What it has to do with is African American men understanding the situation they're in and making a decision with the informed, making an informed decision with what the information that they have in front of them. I'm kind of stumbling on my words for a second. So just because you're informing someone of a situation doesn't mean you hate a particular group. It doesn't mean that. And the truth be told, African women and African American women, African American women are descendants of African women. They're related to African women, have the same paternal lineage. A lot of them have the same maternal lineage. I mean, we're kinfolk. That's why you can go to Africa and you can see somebody that looks like somebody back here. When my wife got here, she kept talking about how the people look like Yoruba people, because the Yoruba was a tribe that was heavily enslaved and put on the slave ships and sent here. Anyway, I digress. So there's not a lot as an African American man that you can do with contempt. When somebody just has a disdain for you, there's not a lot that you can do with that. And I'm gonna tell you, when there's something that's been embedded in the psyche of a particular person or a particular group of people about another particular group of people, it's hard to eliminate the stereotypes. See, there's a stereotype about African American women called the angry black woman. But why is she angry though? And I don't even think that African American women need understand why they're really angry. Should they be angry? Yes. Who should they be angry with is another daggone question in itself. The anger is misplaced towards their African American male counterpart. Now, why do I say that that alone means there's not nothing that you can do with a woman that has a Western upbringing and Western mindset? Because she can be here and have a different upbringing. She can be in America and have a different upbringing. There's many cultures are here in America. Many people are here in America that don't have Western values. They have a different mindset. So why do I say a Western woman? I'm talking about a mindset, a Western woman's mindset, particularly an African American Western woman mindset. So why do I say that when a woman has a contempt for you, there's nothing you can do? Because she already feels like you're worthless. She already feels like you're not due respect. African American women didn't get that idea because black men were just doing these things to them. That's a lie. They got that idea because of propaganda, what they saw on television, the war on drugs, all of these things, the image of the African American man that was put out. And it's just not true. It's a false image. So let's go to the Bible real quick. I'm gonna read this off of BibleHub.com. Let's just go to the Bible real quick. And what does it say about a woman? How should she see her man? This is gonna start with 21. Submitting yourselves one to another in the fear of God. You know what? Let me go to my Bible because I don't like that. Okay. My version, the Sefer Bible, which is the version I use, says the fear for the man is the head of the woman, even as Mashiach is the head of the called out assembly, and he is the savior of the body. Therefore, as the called out assembly is subject to Mashiach, so let the women be subject to their own men in everything. Men, love your women, even as Mashiach also loved the called out assembly and gave himself for it, that he might sanctify it and cleanse it with washing of water by the word. One second. Let me get back into this. I logged out by a second. That he might present it to himself a glorious called out assembly, not having a spot or wrinkle or such thing, but that it should be only holy and without blemish. So ought men to love their women as their own bodies. He that loves his woman loves himself. So the Most High is giving instructions on a man how he's supposed to love his woman. But watch this. For no man ever yet hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, even as I denied the called out assembly. For we are members of his body and of his flesh and of his bones. For this cause shall a man leave his mother and father and shall be joined unto his woman, and the two shall become one flesh. This is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Mashiach and the called out assembly. So, same as what Paul is saying, I speak concerning the Mashiach and the called out men of God and the called out assembly. It says, nevertheless, let every one of you in particular so love his woman even as himself, and the woman see that she reverence her husband. Reverence her husband. Now let's do a little quick Google search of what reverence means. Oh, wait a minute. What that say? Reverence. A deep respect for someone or something. And the verb says regard or treat with deep respect. All right. So the Western woman has been taught to not have a deep respect or reverence for her man, but to only have contempt for her man. And the African American woman has taken the blunt of that theology and teaching and that ideology. I said theology, but ideology of teaching. So again, I ask you, with the knowledge that you have, is it wise to take a woman that has a Western mindset? You be the judge. I'm out.